A country that provides access to education opportunities will be addressing the critical needs for development. The Higher Education Students Financing Scheme is another milestone on the scorecard for the NRM government after the Universal Primary Education in 1997 and recently the Universal Secondary Education. The Uganda Higher Education Students Financing Scheme is a fund intended to provide financing to Ugandan students who have qualified for higher education in recognized institutions of higher learning, but are unable to support themselves financially. It is also aimed at increasing equitable access, support highly impoverished Ugandan children who qualify for university and tertiary education, to ensure regional balance in higher education services, and to develop support courses that are critical to national development. The passing of the bill by Parliament and the President's assent into law was a milestone in the implementation of the scheme. The Higher Education Financing Board will initially offer loans to students pursuing their first degrees in local public and private chartered universities. Over the years, the loans shall be extended in the ratio of 3:2 humanities to science programs. While launching the scheme, the President of the Republic of Uganda, His Excellency YOWERI KAGUTA MUSEVENI, emphasized the importance of the NRM government establishment of Higher Education Students Loan Scheme as one of the avenues for national development. The scheme will kick off with shillings 6 billion, which will be always revised upwards in future. The government, through State House Fund, has been supporting many students from Luwero, northern Uganda and Karamoja under the State House scholarships to a tune of 30 billion shillings annually. This will be phased out once the students' loan scheme starts. He further said that science students will be priority for now, while art students will be considered later. 4 million shillings will be given to every student to cater for tuition and research, while other components like accommodation, meals and transport will be cost shared by students. The government is spending 1.6 trillion annually on the education sector, and this year that amount will get up to 1.7 trillion. The government of Uganda will also support scientists who can make machines or machine parts after graduation through the Innovation Fund of 50 billion shillings.
The figure has now grown of self-sponsorship. Now, many of the parents are having a problem getting money to sponsor the children who do not get government scholarships. That's why, therefore, at the last stage in our financing packaging, we have said no, let's have a loan scheme. Let these children get a loan. It is low interest. Low interest. I saw that some of you do economics here. And you know, in economics, there's what we call inflation. The 10 shillings of today, tomorrow will be 9.5 shillings, because 5% would have been eaten by inflation in the next year. So I think what they want is to keep the money above inflation. That's why they are talking of low interest. Our inflation is low. It's about 5%, 4%, sometimes 7%. So the interest will just be to make sure that the money retained the same value as last year. That's why we have introduced the student loan scheme. We are starting with 6 billion, but this money would increase. Why would it increase? In my office, I have been supporting so many students. It started supporting the rural children who had lost their parents, then children in northern Uganda, then in Karamoja. You have been hearing of so-called State House scholarships. Now we want to phase that one out. Because that one was free money, grant, more or less. I think the figure there had gone up to 30 billion a year. Now the children we took on, once they finish their courses, we are not going to have new ones. So that money will come and be added to this scheme. So eventually, the figure will grow. And of course, each year we shall be adding on, because we are putting 6 billion now, next year it will be 6 billion. Then some of the money in State House will come this side. Once the people they were supporting finish, it will end up being a big scheme. Initially, we shall start with the scientists. So the ones of arts should wait a bit. And when the money grows, we don't mind, we shall also support the students of arts. Now, finally, what Dr. MUYINGO told you, you must pay back when you finish. And you get a job. Otherwise, we shall have to come to where you're working and arrest you for defaulting and also for being a bad Christian or a bad Muslim or even a bad pagan, whatever you are, because even the pagans, we use the word omuntu mulamu, good conduct, even for pagans. Therefore, I'm very happy here. I'm very happy to be here today to launch this scheme, because it's now almost complete our ladder of supporting education, especially for the families of the poor people in Uganda.
The Minister for Education and Sports, retired Major Jessica ALUPO, said the scheme will help increase access for the youth in high institutions of learning.
The Students' Loan Scheme, as it's popularly known, is that it will help the poor children, the needy children, the socially disadvantaged children to access higher education. And because we have made the law such that those needy students who will take up those loans should pursue programs that are critical to national development and can get them jobs or get them employment. It means that more and more young people will join the labor force productively and become producers, and that means that the economy will be strengthened, and that means that those children who join the job market will participate in the socio-economic development of our country and will participate in the realization of Vision 2040 for Uganda. And when they pay back, it means that a lot more of the young children will continue joining to do programs in universities and tertiary institutions which can enable them to be churned out in the world of work, and they participate in the socio-economic development because they are productive themselves, and they can also be productive by others when they employ them. So they participate in socio-economic development, they strengthen the economy because they will be in the cycle of the money economy, and then therefore that means that our realization of Vision 2040 will be enhanced.
The Minister of State for Higher Education, Dr. John CHRYSOSTOM MUYINGO, hailed the President for having fulfilled a pledge he made in his 2011 manifesto to provide loans to students to support them acquire higher education. He urged the beneficiaries to exercise utmost good faith when provided the loans and also not to lie about their biodata. He also called on students to pay back the loans to ensure that more students benefit from the fund.
For those who will be given scholarships, you will not be expected to pay back. But for those who will be given loans, I want to tell you that this is not free money. This is not money for politics. We must prepare ourselves to pay back, so that many more Ugandans benefit from this wonderful idea of loaning out money to enable Ugandans access higher education. It's very important that at the very beginning that people get to know that this is money to be paid back. I know Ugandans are very smart. They can even create mountains out of nothing. I know what happened to the money that was given to us for Ntandikwa. I know what has been happening to all other government programs. But this one is money that has got to be paid back. I'm asking all the beneficiaries to make sure that when filling in the forms, give the correct information. Correct information that will enable you and will enable the board continue helping you, and at the same time continue helping many others by helping you to access or to pay back this money. About this loan, we are going to start with this. We are going to start with about 1,000 students, and of course here we are targeting programs or academic programs that are critical for national development. Of course, as I said, as the resource envelope improves, all programs will be catered for. I would like to advise those who intend to benefit from this program to be on a lookout to understand what programs we are going to begin with. The most important thing that the board that is meant to manage this scheme has been put in place. Recently, the Minister of Education and Sports launched, the Minister of Education and Sports inaugurated this board. They have started working. They are going to come up with these programs. Once these programs have been developed, we shall be informing you through the media, through circulars. But what I can tell you is that after you've been admitted for a higher education program, check with our ministry, check on our website, check with the academic registrars in the various universities for application forms. Those application forms will be giving you all the details of what is expected of you and which programs we are going to be sponsoring for a start.
The acting Vice-Chancellor, Kyambogo University, Professor Eli Katunguka, say the scheme is a clear testimony that higher education will be funded and be made available to millions of Ugandan children.
Is intended to benefit students. So I want to call upon all students, especially the science-based students, to take up the challenge, follow up the announcements for the scheme, apply so that they can get funding to support their undergraduate studies. This is an opportunity which we cannot miss, and as a country, I think we want to thank government through the Ministry of Education, His Excellency, for having come up with this scheme, which we believe will benefit many, many Ugandans.
Earlier on, the Chairman Task Force, Michael WANYAMA, hailed the Minister of Education and Sports for her efforts to ensure that the Finance Board was inaugurated, which will facilitate the work. Further, Reverend Professor Kalisto Locheng is the chairperson of the Higher Education Students Finance Board.
The Ministry of Education set up a task force to largely work on the legal framework, the institutional framework, and the financial framework, and advise the government on how best they could finance students pursuing higher education. The justification for this scheme is arising out of a number of issues. One is that the government over years has created a number of policy interventions to increase equitable access to education. As you are aware, we have UPE program that has led to an upsurge in the number of student enrollments. And then, of course, the government also introduced universal secondary education. And lately, it also came up with universal post-O-level education training. And all these policy interventions have meant that the number of students accessing education at all levels have increased. So what government is coming up with is to complete the cycle of education, such that students who have been supported at all levels are able to complete that cycle. And of course, as you remember, or you are aware, is that His Excellency has been promising the citizens of Uganda that he will enable those who cannot afford to pursue higher education. This clearly came out in his manifesto for presidential campaign. And I also want to inform the public that it's even a constitutional right that all Ugandans should access education. So what has been missing is the policy direction or a clear legal regime to the state how financing of higher education should be done. I want to inform the viewers that it is a constitutional right for all Ugandans to have access to education. However, there was no legal regime that clearly defined how financing of higher education should be done. So what we have done is to come up with a policy that clearly defines financing of higher education, and this policy informed the principles on which we based on making the law. So a lot of consultations were done with the key stakeholders in the sector on how best a loan scheme can be established. And I want to inform the viewers that after consultations at all levels, including Parliament and the Cabinet, which eventually passed the bill, Parliament passed the bill after the approval of Cabinet, and eventually this bill was assented to by His Excellency the President of Uganda in February this year. So as we talk now, it's an act of Parliament. So we have a law that clearly talks about the eligibility criteria. It clearly talks about the funding mechanism. It clearly talks about the institutional framework, how the scheme is going to be governed. And it also talks about the repayment methods by those who are going to borrow the money.
The launch of the scheme is another milestone for the education sector, which will eventually support graduates of universal primary education and universal secondary education to attain higher education, something that was a dream of the needy parents in Uganda.